Sometime when we think quite deeply about life, so we notice that our life is surrounded by many vulnerabilities, right? And the vulnerabilities are like part of life. They are unavoidable. For example, like I do not have full understanding about my current life and what will be my fate after just a moment, right? So because life is too vulnerable, we tend to ignore these very minute details normally in daily life. But when we try to think about, when we give like little focus on these things, so we notice that life is full of these things, the vulnerabilities. And yes, it makes us little saddened about our own existence, right? But there is a saying, some great person said already, that more vulnerable our life is, the more stronger we come out of that particular situation. So if you go by this example, so the more vulnerable we are, the more vulnerability we face, so we tend to come out more stronger from that, and we become more capable to live in that kind of situation, to handle that kind of situation, right? Even if we notice, so for example, we can take it with a very beautiful example. If we caught fever, or we go through some cold or cough, so what happens in that particular moment? Our body get fever, right? We get fever. So when we get fever, so our immune system responds very heavily, or it respond in that kind of, what you can say, with very force, very full aggression, to fight with that particular pathogen whichever entered from outside, right? So when our immune system fights, so what happens, our immune system develops, or our immune system improves, or what you can say, gets more stronger to fight that, to overcome that outside external threat, right? So same vulnerable situation, or the vulnerability with life is also, we can understand with this basic, like the fevers example. Suppose we are like our immune system, and the vulnerabilities are like outside so virus. So when they attack us, so we tend to become more stronger to fight them, right? So that makes us more stronger. So it's like with this is a basic general understanding about what vulnerable, or how vulnerability really act, or how it affects our life, right? So if we try to understand the vulnerabilities, so we face these vulnerabilities in very different spectrum of life, right? So every person have their own way of vulnerabilities, because what's my vulnerability, that there is no guarantee that's you are as well. You might be having a different, which is not relevant to me, right? So when we notice these basic things, we try to understand. For example, look at a writer. A writer is vulnerable about the criticism. So in that case, what happens is that majority of the writer, either they don't write, or they write, so they try to negate those negative response, right? Or the criticism. So that makes a writer afraid to publish his work or her work in the workplace, right? So same it goes like with many other things as well, not just limited to our own writer. Any field whenever you go, so there are definitely the condition makes you more vulnerable. But if you keep up, if you want to face, if you want to become someone in that particular field, so you will have to face those vulnerabilities, right? Otherwise it will not be the possible for you to become that kind of person what you desire to become, right? So if you try to, even vulnerability when we are talking about, so even our earth, on earth what we are living on, so this particular earth itself is too much vulnerable. I know when it's a roaming, we think that earth is too big, but if you see the spectrum of this full universe, or the full our solar system in general, so our solar system itself has many planets and many comets, asteroids, right? So our earth is too much vulnerable from these all sort of planet, asteroid, or any other things, right? Because when we see, so earth, the position in what these planet rotate, so there is a minute change, or there is a minute what you can say, deflection from the point can make chaos. It will totally destroy that particular planet. So you can understand the level of vulnerability, right? The level of vulnerable situation the earth is facing. But what we see in general, the earth is the one of the most magnificent planet. So it's a very basic understanding that if Earth, after facing this level of vulnerabilities, became this magnificent planet, so don't we think that if we will face a higher level of vulnerabilities, so we will tend to become a higher existing personality. It's very natural, right? Because the more vulnerable you are, so the more stronger you are, the more powerfully you exist, right? The more mightier you come up. So the more vulnerable we are, so the more stronger we get. And the higher vulnerability we face, the higher strength we get, the higher possibility of existence we get, right? So if we try to understand, so definitely there are some persons when we face this higher level of vulnerabilities, so every time we don't win. Sometimes there is possibility that we lose from the vulnerability. Though vulnerability come over us, right? We don't feel or we are unable to face them. So in that kind of situation, we have to face failures. We have to face, a writer can face criticism as well, right? So in this very different scenario, we'll have to face failure. And when people face failure, it becomes very hard to stay stable, right? To get or to come in that natural rhythm or natural form. It becomes very hard at that particular period. So when we see, so in this kind of period, there are persons who totally reduce themselves into a box, right? They don't go outside, they stop talking to people, they stop socializing, they stop thinking, they stop imagining, or they stop doing that particular task of what made them face that level of vulnerability or the criticism, right? So when we reduce ourselves to these boxes, so somehow we like diminish or we ignore totally the real purpose or the real what you can say existence of the life itself. So are we supposed to be like this? We'll have to think about these particular things very deeply, because the very nature of life is to exist, right? As Earth is facing, as I gave Earth's example, so Earth is facing this higher level of vulnerability but still existing, right? Existing as a magnificent planet. So don't we think it's our own nature, a particular nature of existence itself, that the higher vulnerability does not matter. Okay, if sometimes we can lose, I'm not saying that we are like we always win. Sometimes we tend to lose, sometimes we tend to face a rejection, sometimes we tend to face criticism. But does that mean that we stop living our life? Does that mean that we reduce ourselves to that corner or a box, like a 4x4 room? It's not the case, right? It's not the purpose of life, neither it has to be the reason or the main understanding about life. Because life is a beautiful thing, right? We got life to experience each and every single thing. We just can't take back steps for the sake of criticism, for the sake of our failure. Because be it whatever it is, they are part of life. So if we are embracing our success, our win, so we have to embrace our failure or what you can say criticism as well, because they are also part of life. We just cannot ignore them or quit when we are facing them. So if we try to conclude this particular topic of today, see, it's a very nature of nature itself that vulnerability will be always over there, because they are very necessary for our own existence, right? Because always our nature or our nature of existence tests us in all kind of particular kind of situations that we are able to face or not. Because when we face them, we become more stronger to face like future vulnerabilities, or to live happily, or to live with more ability, right? So it's a very nature of nature itself. So it does not matter whatever hardship we face, does not matter how many failures we face, does not matter how many rejection, does not matter how many criticism, be it whatever it is. Our only focus or our only understanding shall be that we have to exist. After facing all sort of criticism, after facing all sort of vulnerabilities, after standing tall and like proving your own existence that yes, I exist. So this has to be the true spirit of us. This has to be the true spirit of life. Because when we live so vulnerability, we are not just a human. We only humans are not facing these vulnerabilities. Every single life form, whoever exists, they face this vulnerability. The all sort of existence, whatever you see, whatever they are surrounding, whatever you are surrounding, they all are facing these vulnerabilities. We are not alone. So if they are facing, they are still existing, we have to face, still exist, because this is the beauty of life, right? And I'm sure you understood this. So if you understood today's video, or I think I gave you little satisfaction or little understanding about this, so feel free to subscribe, because if you did not do, I don't understand why not. And yes, if you did not do so, at least mention in comment section that what's the reason you don't like me probably. So that could be reason, or if there is some other reason, some suggestions, so use comment section for that. And yes, thank you for your subscription if you did. If you not, so please mention in comment section. And I'm sure I did little clear this what you can say doubt about this, doubt or little understanding about this particular what our vulnerable condition, situation, the vulnerability about life itself, right? So I'm sure you will not be afraid to face vulnerabilities. You will be standing tall to face and embrace yourself. Be it whatever, you win or you lose does not matter at all. Just embrace, right? So by then, take care.